Well, good morning and welcome to all as we gather on this first Sunday of Advent. It is the New Year's Day of the Church's liturgy. And to all guests, what a blessing it is that you're here. All of us now together to begin this new liturgical year, this time of Advent, these 4 Sundays preceding the celebration of the Nativity of the Lord. Advent is a word that means to come or to arrive. Now, in case you missed the announcements right before Mass, there's some bad news and some good news I have to share with you. The bad news is, after this Mass, no donuts. The good news is we have pancakes instead. So hopefully there'll be a good substitute for all. The proceeds of the pancake breakfast go to support our wonderful preschool program here at St. Benedict, and hope that you can join in after Mass. Congratulations, they go out to Broken Arrow High School, the football team winning their first state championship at 6A Division I. So I was going to go to the game, honestly, but I was at the theology at the Tower there at the University of Tulsa to benefit St. Michael Radio. And then after that, I was going to go to the game, but had this rain delay and all the lightning that went on for a long time. And I worked the weekends, so I had to go home and get some rest on Friday night. And so I think the game ended at midnight or something like that, but congratulations nonetheless. Also, congratulations to one of our former associate pastors here at St. Benedict's, Father Paul Maolieri. He is an Air Force chaplain, and in a wonderful ceremony that we hosted yesterday morning, he was promoted from the rank of captain to major. So it was an honor to host that event for him and for his family. Also, our congratulations today go out to the Coyle family for the baptism of their son, Beau, here yesterday at St. Benedict's. Please know that we have the Advent devotional booklets in the columns and also our angel tree, or trees, actually, for you to take items, suggestions to help those who are in need, particularly during this Advent season. Please know that tomorrow evening there's an Advent dinner for the men of this parish. All the men of the parish are welcome at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening for a wonderful dinner together. Please know that this coming week our Advent reconciliation service is on Wednesday beginning at 5. And we have at least 10 priests that are going to come and be here. So please show up and put us to work. 10 priests, hopefully short lines. It's a great time of the year to go to confession, especially if you've not taken part in that Sacrament of Mercy for a while. Please also know this coming Saturday is the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. It is a holy day of obligation. So we'll have a vigil Mass on Friday evening at 7, and the Mass of the day at 8:30 Saturday morning. All are welcome. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Thus says Jesus in today's Gospel from Luke. On this first Sunday of Advent, this time of preparation of the Church's liturgy for the Nativity of the Lord, people will be perplexed. They'll be afraid. They will literally drop dead from fright. Well, so much for ho, 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 and mistletoe, and the 8 tiny reindeer and the jolly old elf himself. Apparently, Jesus did not get the memo. It's the holiday season. We're all supposed to be filled with good cheer and the spirit of Christmas. Exactly how we define the spirit of Christmas is up to us. Perhaps he didn't check his calendar. Does he not know what time of the year it is? But of course he knows. It's Advent. One of my priest heroes is Father Alfred Delp. He was a German Jesuit in the first part of the 20th century. He was a leader in the resistance to Hitler and the Nazi movement, and for that reason he was eventually arrested and executed in the closing months of World War II in February 1945 at the age of 37. Much of Delp's focus of his prayer and his personal spirituality was to understand the meaning of Advent, to see it more than just a short liturgical season that is often drowned out with all the busyness and noise of the final weeks of the calendar year. Did you notice the liturgical color for Advent is purple? That's what the priests and deacons wear that adorns the altar. We have the Advent wreath that will be blessed here in a few moments. Delp said that whenever the church brings out that color, the serious color of purple, because it has a somber tone to it, whenever this serious color is brought out, serious questions are being asked. That the center of Advent is not merely to remember and to prepare for the reenactment of the historical events of the birth of Jesus. Rather, Advent centers on asking, what are the fundamental attitudes of our lives? What's the very reason that we exist? That's why Jesus confronts us today with this image of Judgment Day, telling us to be ready, not to be surprised, but to stand up straight with our heads held high. It's not Jesus who needs to be reminded what time of the year it is. It's us. We're the ones who need to be reminded that our redemption from sin and death is at hand through the Word of God becoming flesh in Jesus Christ, what we call the incarnation, that the Word of God, the creative power of God, the second person of the Trinity, becomes one of us. Takes on our humanity, becomes one of us in all things but sin. And we look for him to come again, the second coming or the second advent on that day of judgment. Are we ready to stand before Jesus, the Son of Man? Are we ready to see that the focus of our lives is to be centered upon Jesus, to conduct ourselves in a manner that desires holiness, a life pleasing to God, as St. Paul tells us? Is this the fundamental attitude of our lives? To know that we exist that for this reason. Such are the serious questions of the color purple and of the season of Advent. Ho, 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 indeed. Delp saw that the seeking to answer these questions and the opening of the heart being centered upon Jesus was the basic attitude needed to be a disciple, to be authentically the church. All of life is to be a type of Advent, of that waiting, of that preparing to welcome the Lord, not just the 4 Sundays that precede Christmas Day. To have this attitude of Advent, we must first accept that without the incarnation, which is what we celebrate on Christmas Day, without the incarnation, the Word of God becoming flesh, we're powerless. And life ultimately has no meaning, has no fulfillment. We're powerless to the results of sin, and nothing short of Jesus will fulfill our hearts and give ultimate meaning to life. That's what we're preparing for. The incarnation is God's decision, as Delp put it, become our ally in the struggles of life, to save us from a state of meaningless, to overcome our state of sin, our helplessness, to save us from eternal death. Advent challenges us to see that God has made promises, and those promises will be kept. That's what we hear from the prophet Jeremiah. For this reason, we are to be aware, to be awake of the incarnation breaking into this world and breaking into our lives on a daily basis, certainly sacramentally, as we're doing here today of the offering of the Mass, receiving Christ in the Eucharist, but that daily coming of Christ into our lives, to be awake, to be aware. Our lives are going to have as much of a shape of this attitude of Advent as we choose to make it. The culture that we live in is not going to help. And that too is simply the color purple reminds us of and calls us to remember. It will be as much of an Advent as we choose to make it. And in doing so, we are to stand up erect with heads held high, knowing that our redemption in Jesus Christ is at hand.